using. Their calculus is, what can we do to increase our numbers as a party in the next election? And they're fearful that if they take a principled stand, that somehow the American people are going to hold it against them. And the reason they believe that is because the people with the megaphone are telling them that. Which means the rest of us, the 70%, have got to speak up, whether it's vocally, whether it's writing, or at the ballot box.
Or the internet.
Or the internet. Now, I will tell you that when we changed Congress, we made an initial step. But we needed what we're experiencing right now to understand that the next election cycle, not only do we need to put candidates out there that reflect our principles against establishment candidates who are fearful, we also need to make sure that those candidates have the backing that they need, whether it's money, people, those sorts of things, and quite honestly, training. Some of the candidates that ran out there who were aligned with us on principle didn't know how to run a campaign.
Yep. John McCain.
Well, I don't know if I'd put him in that category of principle. And with all due respect to his military service, I think he's too much of a go-along to get along Republican. But I think it's important for us, and I emphasize more than any of the other stuff, that we need to teach good people how to run for office. Because whether you are a person of strong principle, whether you are a party person, whatever, there's still a process you have to go through to run an effective campaign, and that process hasn't changed. And we have to be able to train. And it's unfortunate. The Republican Party offers training to candidates and all that, but if they don't think you're viable, like if they look at you and say, you're Sharon Angle, I'm not going to help you, then that person has no avenue. I think it's time for our Tea Party people to start thinking about having their own training opportunities for candidates. Think about this. There's an organization, the American Conservative Union. They're the ones that run CPAC. And they had this big controversy this year where they invited Go Proud to the conference. They also have an organization called the Conservative Book Club. And I was at this Tea Party Summit in Phoenix, and there were a lot of other authors there. And we all were comparing notes, and we realized that we all had one thing in common. All of our books were rejected by the Conservative Book Club. Now, I have no idea why. I have my opinions. But we decided that rather than sit around and gripe about it, why don't we form a Tea Party book club? Okay. So a bunch of us renegades are getting together. We're going to see what it's going to take. We're going to see if one or more of the big Tea Party organizations will give us some sponsorship, and we're going to have a Tea Party book club. Because it's quite clear to me that there's a dichotomy between political parties, which are only concerned about winning, and the Tea Party, which is concerned about returning us to basic American principles. So, courage for politicians has to be injected.
I was actually glad to see where the Tea Party people who were voted in are holding the line on spending and what they're supposed to be doing, and not worried about getting the votes for the next cycle, but doing what's right for the country.
And you know something, sir? I hope and pray that when they go back out for re-election, like Senator Rand Paul, if you believe what you've read about him, you think this man is just a few bricks shy of the load. But sitting in that room where he went over the numbers, and the numbers are indisputable, this man knows what he's talking about, and he said it so clearly. He says, right now they're just scraping at the margins. Said, at a minimum, just to cover the service on the debt, just to break even cover the service on the debt this year, we need cuts of $200 billion. What are they proposing? $61 billion?
6.
Well,
They're down to 6.
You've got to get into the special interest and all those people who have titles.
And this is the struggle we have. So when I talk to Tea Party groups, I tell them, and I know you're tired. I don't sleep much. And it's because my mind is churning constantly about this. Let me share a couple things with you. I believe that the Tea Party has three responsibilities to the American public, and I call them the 3 E's. One of them is exhortation. That's what you do when you have the rallies. That's what you do when you go out there and you make your presence felt. You embolden people who may believe as you do but are afraid to come out, and you start building that way. The other one is education. And a lot of people have book clubs, or they have Constitution nights where they get together and they spend time learning about the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. And interestingly enough, by the way, let me divert for a minute. If you haven't gotten the book, 10 Books Every Conservative Should Read by Benjamin Wiker, that's W-I-K-E-R, I highly recommend it. 10 books every conservative should read. Not only will you learn about the things that you already know about America's founding principles, you'll learn that those were based on ancient concepts going as far back as Aristotle and the Bible. And it ties it all together. And it names one imposter, a book that everyone thinks is a conservative manifesto. But in fact, as he explains, it doesn't align with conservative principles and values at all. Anybody care to guess what book that is? Huh? No? No. Atlas Shrugged.
Yes. Yes.
And before you pass judgment on it, I suggest you read the book and you read the paragraph, the chapter he writes about it, because when I was done with it, I was stunned. Not only by how the book rejects a lot of things that conservatives believe, but the way she lived her life. Generally speaking, I was just stunned. And so I recommend it.
I've raised the question, why are the Jewish communities in the same boat as the black communities? Why are the Jewish people so bent on liberal, democratic candidates and policies?
It's the same reasons, but I will say this, it's changing. It's very difficult for them to see what's happening with this administration and their casual attitude toward Israel and their seeming amenity with the Muslim world. It's very hard for them to see this. I think they realize that this is not a friend of the Jewish people. And to their credit, you're seeing a lot of change. I know that I have had a lot more people that I associate with who will say, I come from a Jewish home, my parents used to be this way, but now they're wondering and I'm not wondering. You know, I know where I need to be. So it's changing. Yes, ma'am.
What's number 3?
Huh?
What was number 3 of the 3 E's?
Oh, thank you. Elections. Elections. You know, we have to not only turn out for elections, we have to be active in campaigns. You know, there are tools these days that you can use from your home where you can make phone calls on behalf of candidates. If you're not comfortable making phone calls, you can stand on a corner with a sign and wave. I really hated that because it's usually at 5:30 in the morning during rush hour. But it's one of, I mean, there's nothing that's done on a campaign that someone can't do, regardless of their temperament or whether they're great on the phone or horrible on the phone. There's something else they can do. And then get people to turn out. Now, one of the things that the Democrats are very good at is getting out the vote on election day. Sometimes votes that you didn't know were out there. But they're very good at that. And so we need to use the tools of the system for our purposes. Okay? And it's important for us to understand. So exhortation, education, and elections. Those are the 3 things that I think the Tea Party movement should focus on going forward. And the fight is not over. In fact, the fight isn't in 2012. I think a lot of us thought this was going to be a year where we're going to reload. We better reload now. Because we need to inject courage into the ones that aren't going along, and we need to buck up the ones that are. Yes, sir. No.
I was going to say primaries probably are as important as the election, the final election, because I believe that's how John McCain got nominated, was he won the primary by Democrats voting for him.
Here's a suggestion for you, and I don't know how this will work. We need to let the RNC know that their primary process is broken. And there are 2 reasons why. The first one, as you pointed out, is that they have open primaries, so people can cross over and screw up the primary. The second thing is that unlike the Democrats, who have proportional allocation of delegates based on the vote totals. Republicans have